October 9th, 1943. 25,000 feet above the industrial heartland of Marienborg, East Prussia, modern-day Malbork, Poland. The air is a frigid crystal blue vault. Below, a carpet of B-17 flying fortresses, over 300 heavy bombers of the 8th Air Force, stretch to the horizon, a slow, shimmering river of aluminum, heading for the huge Focke-Wulf aircraft factory. The sound is a deep, continuous, engine-driven roar that vibrates in the chest. Leading the assault from above, the German fighter screen, the Jagdgeschwader 52, prepares its attack. Hauptmann Erich "Booby" Hartmann, the ace of aces, peers through the gun sight of his Messerschmitt Bf 109 G6, its nose painted with his signature black tulip. He's looking at the distant sparkling dots of the American escort. He's seen these raids before. Slow, predictable heavies, protected by agile, relatively lightweight P-38 Lightnings and the new fast P-51 Mustangs, planes he knows how to handle. But today, there's a new shape in the defensive swarm. A massive, bulbous, barrel-chested fighter, so heavy it seems to defy the laws of aerodynamics. It's the Republic P-47 Thunderbolt, or, as the pilots are already calling it, the Jug. Achtung Jäger, be careful of the new ones. They're sluggish on the climb, but fast on the dive, crackles the voice of his Gruppen commander over the radio. Stay outside their formation and pick off the bombers. Do not waste ammunition on the escort unless you must. Hartmann rolls his 109 onto its back and drops into a shallow dive, the Daimler-Benz DB605 engine screaming its approval. His target, a crippled B-17 smoking from its number 3 engine. But suddenly, one of the new American fighters flashes past him, its 8.5 caliber machine guns spitting fire. Hartmann pulls hard, his fighter momentarily staggering under the high G-load, missing the P-47's tail by mere meters. He sees his chance. The Thunderbolt, slow in the turn, is vulnerable. Hartmann pushes the throttle to the firewall. He closes to less than 150 meters, the perfect range for the powerful 30mm motor cannon Mk108 cannon in the nose, a weapon designed to obliterate a bomber with a single short burst. The cannon fires, a hammering brop, and he watches 2 explosive rounds from the MG151 20mm cannon in the wings, and a handful of the 30mm shells slam into the root of the P-47's huge straight wing and into the area right behind the cowl where the engine sits. In his mind, the Thunderbolt should have disintegrated. He's watched these shells tear the wings off a Spitfire or turn a Yak 9 into a fireball. But this one doesn't. Instead, the P-47 shudders violently. A thick stream of black oil and white glycol bursts from its engine cowling, and a huge chunk of the wing's trailing edge shears off. It immediately drops its nose and begins a steep dive. Got him, Hartmann thinks, pulling out to avoid the turbulent wake. But as the American plane plummets toward the clouds, Hartmann is aghast. The landing gear hasn't dropped. The cockpit canopy hasn't blown off. The Pratt & Whitney R2800 double wasp engine, trailing smoke and oil like a wounded Leviathan, is still turning its propeller. The enormous air-cooled radial engine, a 2,000 horsepower block of forged steel and aluminum, seems to be stubbornly refusing to die. It's not just damaged, it's shredded. Yet the P-47 is still under control, still descending in a smooth, intentional curve. It's gone from a fighter to a runaway freight train, but it's flying. He's still flying. Did you see that? I hit him with 3 full seconds, shouts his wingman, Oberleutnant Klaus Förster, his voice tight with confusion. Hartmann watches the P-47 disappear into the gray layer below. He checks his remaining ammunition. The entire attack had been a waste of precious shells. This was not the thin-skinned, fuel tank-prone aircraft they were used to. This was something else. This was an iron monster. The German pilots were used to a surgical strike, a quick, deadly pass. Against the P-47, that doctrine was useless. This machine could absorb the shock and keep going. Verdammte Eisen, mutters Hartmann, a rare expletive for the usually composed ace. Damn iron.
The phrase began to spread through the Luftwaffe like a bad omen. The official intelligence briefings had been confident the P-47 Thunderbolt was a compromised design, too heavy, too sluggish at low altitude, and fundamentally unsound due to its gargantuan engine requiring an enormous turbo supercharger system that ran the length of the fuselage. It was a brute, not a rapier, but against the American 8th Air Force, which valued range and the ability to sustain a high-speed dive, the brute was proving to be an anvil. A week later, on October 16, 1943, Major Gunther Lutzow, one of the most respected commanders in the Luftwaffe, prepared for an intercept near Hamm, Germany. His unit, the elite JG-1 Azau, was tasked with breaking through the American escort to get at a bomber formation targeting the massive Ruhr Valley industrial complex. Lutzow, flying a heavily armed Focke-Wulf FW-190A5, knew the American tactics well. He preferred the rapid head-on attack, a fleeting pass that maximized the power of his four wing-mounted 20mm MG-151/20 cannon and two nose-mounted 13mm machine guns. Lutzow spotted a flight of P-47s positioning themselves for a high-speed dive. He executed a climbing turn, putting himself directly on the tail of a lone, slightly straggling Thunderbolt. The American pilot, Lieutenant Carl "Rocky" Rhodes, was busy scanning the sky for other fighters, unaware that he was now squarely in the sights of a German major with over 100 victories. Lutzow hammered the firing button. The four cannons spoke in a deafening, shaking roar, delivering a tremendous volume of fire. He observed a clean burst. 20mm high-explosive shells detonated against the P-47's fuselage just behind the cockpit and into the left wing root. The damage was immediate and appalling. A large section of the aluminum skin peeled back from the fuselage, revealing the complex internal structure. Pieces of metal, like silver confetti, streamed back from the wing. "He's hit! Breaking apart!" yelled Lutzow over the intercom, already pulling hard away to avoid the expected debris. But once again, the expected explosion, the satisfying billowing plume of black smoke and fire, did not happen. The Thunderbolt was gravely wounded. It was no longer flying straight. The rudder and elevators were visibly damaged. Yet, like the one that Hartmann had struck, it stubbornly refused to die. The big R-2800 engine, though spitting smoke from a damaged oil cooler line, still hammered away, its massive propeller pulling the fighter through the air. The plane was absorbing punishment that would have shattered an FW-190 or vaporized a Spitfire. Both lighter, more agile aircraft designed with a focus on speed and climb, not sheer brute force. The P-47's extraordinary durability was an accident of design, a feature Lutzow couldn't have known about. To accommodate the complex turbo supercharger and its massive air ducts, the P-47's airframe required a deep, barrel-like fuselage with incredibly strong structural members. The pilot sat practically on top of a steel-armored firewall and behind a nearly solid block of 2,300 pounds of engine. The German cannon shells, which were devastating against aircraft with liquid-cooled engines, like the Bf-109 and P-51, often struck the P-47's large air-cooled radial engine, a tough, bulky mass that could still run even with several cylinders and cooling fins shot away. The shells hit the engine and often ricocheted or simply failed to penetrate deep enough to cause a catastrophic fire or explosion, which was the Germans' primary objective. Rhodes, the American pilot, was now fighting the unresponsive controls, struggling to keep his heavy machine level. He knew the enemy was gone, having pulled away in the belief he was finished. He nursed the aircraft away from the main battle, toward the English Channel. He was heading for home in a plane that, by all rights, should have been a spiraling tomb. Lutzow watched with a growing sense of frustration and disbelief. His powerful burst, which should have been a victory, had only resulted in a crippled plane escaping. The American pilots were getting back to base, reporting the attacks, and more importantly, returning with their massive unexpended payloads of .50 caliber ammunition ready to fight another day. Every P-47 that flew home was an enormous morale boost for the American bomber crews and a direct failure for the Luftwaffe. "My God, it is a flying bunker," Lutzow finally said, his voice quiet with professional resignation, his radio silence broken only by a low, frustrated curse. The rules of engagement were changing. They had to stop looking for fire and explosions. They had to aim for the pilot or the oil tank, or keep shooting until the structure completely disintegrated. A terrifying proposition that meant staying in the line of the Thunderbolt's formidable 8-gun array. The rules of engagement were changing. They had to stop looking for fire and explosions. They had to aim for the pilot or the oil tank, or keep shooting until the structure completely disintegrated. A terrifying proposition that meant staying in the line of the Thunderbolt's formidable 8-gun array. The frustration became a tactical crisis. German pilots, especially those flying the agile but lighter Messerschmitt Bf-109, were complaining that they had to chew up a P-47, expending critical ammunition that was needed to down the heavy bombers. The standard short 3-second burst, deadly to other Allied fighters, barely seemed to make the jug falter. The High Command of the Luftwaffe 3 issued a series of urgent field reports and tactical analyses. How could this steel tub sustain so much damage? The answer lay in the airframe's internal anatomy, a secret the Americans were keeping close. German intelligence eventually pieced together the P-47's critical weak points, or rather the locations that were least shielded by the armor-plated engine block. The new orders were simple and brutal. Focus fire on the cockpit area and the oil system. On November 26, 1943, near Bremen, Obus Lieutenant Joseph Prieler of JG-26 Schlageter, known for his aggressive low-level attacks, led a mixed squadron of FW-190A6s. His fighters were heavily armed, carrying the powerful Rüstsat-6 conversion, which added 2 more 20mm MG-151 20 cannon in underwing gondolas, bringing his total cannon count to a devastating 6. The weight made the Focke-Wulf a handful, but the firepower was necessary for the new American targets. Prieler spotted a tight formation of P-47s climbing to a patrol altitude. He executed a flawless high-speed hit-and-run attack, diving from the sun at a speed nearing 700 kilometers per hour. He chose the lead American aircraft, flown by Captain Sam Deacon Jones. Jones saw the warning tracers flash past his right wing and instinctively threw the heavy P-47 into a hard defensive turn, banking sharply to the left. The high-G maneuver presented his fighter's vulnerable underside to Prieler for a fleeting second. This was the window the Germans had learned to look for. Prieler pressed the attack, timing his burst to hit the junction of the fuselage and the wing, aiming precisely at the underside of the fuselage, just aft the main wing spar, the complex area housing the turbo supercharger and its associated piping. The barrage of 6 cannon rounds ripped through the thin aluminum belly. This time, there was no glancing blow on a cylinder head or a ricochet off the heavy engine casing. The shells smashed through the ducting for the turbo supercharger, which ran from the engine, through the fuselage, all the way to the turbine and the tail, and critically, burst open the lines leading to the oil cooler. The damage was instantaneous and fatal to the machine. A sudden, violent gout of thick black oil mixed with flame erupted from the P-47's underside. Without oil pressure, the powerful R-2800 engine seized up violently in less than 30 seconds, turning the propeller into a massive, immovable air brake. Jones fought the dead weight, trying desperately to glide. He looked down and saw the flames licking along the fuselage. He didn't hesitate. He smashed the canopy release handle and threw himself clear into the icy slipstream. Preeler saw the parachute blossom, a sure sign that the pilot was defeated and the iron monster was gone. The Thunderbolt plunged out of the sky and detonated in a white-hot explosion in a German farmer's field below. That was the result they needed. Preeler's report was circulated immediately. The key was the supercharger oil system link, a long, unprotected area that, if hit, would choke the engine to death regardless of the armor plating up front. The war in the air was an ongoing, deadly game of engineering and tactics. The Americans had built an airplane that was a flying tank, but the Germans had finally found the right shell to pierce the armor. The new doctrine? Aim for the underbelly and the pilot. The problem remained, however, of getting into a position to execute this low-angle, difficult attack, while avoiding the P-47's 8 fearsome machine guns. The fight was far from over. It had simply become a more focused and even deadlier contest.